All right, well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you very much. And those who are online now and those people who join us on YouTube, thank you very much. And if anybody wants to connect with us more and be on these Zoom events that we have in real time, that would be wonderful. We'd be make you welcome to come. You can reach us at Buddha Practice Study at gmail.com. That's our email address. Buddha Practice Study at gmail.com. And if you send us your information, send us your email, whatever, we'll send you a link to get onto the Zoom. So thank you all for coming. So last week and the week before, we talked about emptiness, and we'd like to continue to talk about emptiness. It's such an important but kind of abstract topic that it bears, going around the circle several times to be able to help us to stabilize a stream of consciousness about how to process what emptiness is about, and so on, and how to apply it to our everyday lives, because it's not just something that we do 2 hours on Monday night and 2 hours on Sunday and an hour on Thursday or something like that. It's something that we apply each and every day and each and every event that we have in our day. So it's something that we need to recognize and continue that. So what we're going to do is our opening prayers, as we always do, and then afterwards, then we're going to recite the Heart Sutra prayer. So if you have the 101 book, if you have that, the Heart Sutra book, Heart Sutra prayer is in that book. If you don't have this book, but you have another copy of the Heart Sutra, the translation may not be word for word the same, but the meaning will certainly be there. So it's something that you can use to follow us, and perhaps you'll want to take some notes and ask some questions, have a discussion as we move through it. So at this time, does anybody have any comments or questions before we get started with our opening prayers for the people that are online with us right now? Okay. All right, well, thank you very much for joining. Then we'll start with the altruistic motivation. So if you don't mind, I will recite the prayers. So the altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dangwa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Tar pa dang tam she ken pe ba du jo pa je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam ka dam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dang drell nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe zang ju brin po she to pa ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deshe du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wala ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wala ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wala ko. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Transcends all Dangru Paje Pe Pal Dan Lama Dampa Namla Kyabsu Chio Yedam Kil Gorgi La Sok Namla Kyabsu Chio Sange Chom Dende Namla Kyabsu Chio Dampe cho namla kyabsu chio. Pape ge dun namla kyabsu chio. Pawo kadro cho kyong song me song yeshegi chang dang dempa namla kyabsu chio. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shangju Ning Po Chiki Bar Sangye Namla Kapsu Chi Chodang Shangshub Sampayi Soklang Deshin Kapsu Chi Dagi Jindar Nongi Deshegi Shang Shub Tugni Ke Padang Shang Shub Sampe La Pala De Dagrim Shin E Patar De Shindro La Pandandu Shang Shub Samni Ke Gishing Deshindu ni la pala, Rimpa shindu la pajio. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chodam La Shangju Badu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Jinsoki Pe Sonamgi Chola Penshir Sangye Jupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesem chantam she dewadang dewe krudang dempa jorchi. Dognal dang donal gi gudang drawa jorchi. Dognal me pe dewa dang mi drawa jorchi. Ne ring jak dang ni dang drawe dang namla ne pa jorchi. The 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva, once in English and 3 times in the Sanskrit. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain may you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiddhi Me Prayatsa Sara karma sitsa me sitsan triya kuru hong. Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara tada gata bajra mame munsa bajri bhava maha samaya satvaha. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuru Hong. Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattvaha. Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu me bhava sarasiti me prayatsa sara karma sutsa me sitsan shriya kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan saratada gata bajra mame mansa Vajra Mahasamaya Satwaha. The Sagaramati requested sutra in English. Likewise, be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me, completely purified. Take all this food and drink, take all this knowledge, food and drink peacefully. Enjoy it and be satisfied so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated. Thank you very much. Okay, so just a little bit of a discussion about the Heart Sutra. This is one of the most important of all the sutras, part of the Prajnaparamita Sutra. And there's other elements to this. There's the Diamond Sutra and the Lotus Sutra that are part of the Heart Sutra, that are part of the Prajnaparamita Sutra. So I haven't read it all entirely myself, but these parts that I have read are magnificent and are so powerful that they will help us to establish the tracks, the method, the pathway for us to attain liberation from our suffering, from our desire, from our aversions, from our hatred, from our jealousy, from our greediness, from our pridefulness, and from all other things that cause us harm and suffering, and thereby protecting us from doing things to other beings. That hatred, that negativity comes out from us, and so it gives us cause to be able to be peaceful and happy with ourselves and towards all other beings. So the emptiness is what is explained here, is what is explained here in the Heart Sutra. So it starts off with homage. It's giving a short description of the Prajnaparamita. It gives the titles in Sanskrit, Tibet, and English, and then it goes on to talk about what is going on, what is transpiring. So what is happening here is the Buddha is at Vulture Peak Mountain with many, many, many followers, both ordinary monastics and also great bodhisattvas who are there. And so he's giving this teaching to them, and he is basically what we might say channeling Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. So he's going into a meditation and he is channeling Avalokiteshvara, and he's giving this teaching on what emptiness is. So in this booklet that we have, if you've got this 101 book here, you can see that on the second page, on page 15, in that first stanza there, it says, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness are emptiness. So these are the five skandhas. These are the five heaps, the aggregates of what it is to be a human being. So these five things, the form, the perception, concept, and consciousness and feeling are these five skandhas, what we call the skandhas or heaps or aggregates. So each one of these is being called out. You see in the smaller print below, we've written out that this applies to each one of these. So we did this as a matter of being able to really emphasize this and not to gloss over it, but to realize that these are the five skandhas and how this applies, how emptiness applies to all five of these. So I just want to point that out to you. And then we go through and we see the mantra, Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhisoha. So the words Tathagata, Teata, excuse me, Teata means this is it. And then Gate means gone, gone, Gate, gone, gone. In the Sanskrit Tibetan languages, there's no words like very or much or something like that. So they repeat the words to give them more power, more strength. Like we might say, it's very, very gone, very powerful. They would say, Gate, Gate, powerful, powerful, gone, gone, to emphasize the significance of those ideas there. So gone, gone, really gone. Enlightened of the Buddha field, and so be it. So enlightened that we're gone to the Buddha field, that we have become in one with the Buddha field. We have entered into the Buddha field. The Buddha field has become who we are. So whether we look at it as a universal Buddha field or we look at it as an individual Buddha field that melts with all the other Buddha fields, is two different ways of looking at the same thing. So we can talk about that a little bit later, how maybe you've experienced it, what you think about that. So that is the mantra. Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Soha. So ha means so be it, may it be accomplished. And that's the accumulation mantra. So if we were doing this for a period of time, if we were going to do a mile around or 2 mile rounds or 3 mile rounds or 10 mile rounds or 20 mile rounds, if we were going to spend a whole day doing this practice to really have the experience of emptiness that we're being guided through with this mantra. That's the purpose of this, is to guide us to that experience of being liberated, however temporary it might be. But for some time, while we're sitting on the cushion, in whatever manner we're sitting, we might have that experience of realizing emptiness. So by reciting it one time or 2 times or 3 times, doing a mile around or something, may not really give us that experience, may not lead us to that experience. But if we really dedicate ourselves, if we commit ourselves to doing this over and over again for an hour, maybe taking a short break, coming back, doing it for another hour, taking another short break, coming back, and so on, that level of commitment will bring that one-pointed mindfulness together so that we will, at the very least, be knocking on the door of that emptiness, and maybe that emptiness will open up and we'll be able to have an experience with that emptiness. So this is true for all the different practices that we do. Just doing it a few times may lead us to that door, but may not allow us to open up that door. But if we commit to doing it, with great conviction, great motivation to do it, then that door opens and we can cross that threshold and have that experience. So this is what we've been trying to show you how to do this. We've been giving you the doctrine, we've been giving you the teachings on this, the intellectual, what to look out for, how to develop this, what to be aware of, how to cut through our confusions and so on. But at the same time, we've been encouraging the practice of doing the practice of all these different practices that we've been talking about, on Monday and on Sunday. Sunday's been the practice day. Monday's been the teaching day. So we'll come back. We'll do this whole thing. We'll recite this together. Does anybody have any questions right now before we get started? Okay. There'll be time for questions and answers and discussion after we recite this. But first, we need to recite this and do the mantra for some time. We'll do a mail around to get the feeling of what that is, to give us a guidance, to have a slight experience with that. So I think it would be a good idea if we can read this together out loud together. So if you want to turn my voice down on your digital device so you just barely hear me is fine. If you want to leave the volume up, that's okay too. But the point is, you need to recite this with the same level of power, the voice level, the intensity, the loudness as I'm doing. So if harmonizing with my speech helps you, then that's fine. But if turning my speech down and doing it so you just hear your voice and mine just a little bit in the background, that's fine. But the point is for you to really break through whatever you're holding on to that is keeping you from doing this powerfully. Whether it's your ego that says, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, so I'm not really going to engage in this. Because the ego will hold on to anything. It'll hold on to our ability to be able to do this really great, where the ego will hold on to, oh, I'm not good enough to be able to do this. And it'll say, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That's who my identity is. I'm not good enough. You see, that's how insidious the ego is. And we have to cut through the ego. And we do this through our strong motivation, our conviction, our motivation to be doing this, not just for ourselves, but ultimately for the benefit of others. Remember, this is a bodhisattva practice. This is a practice of the Mahayana, the middle way, is when this teaching, this Prajnaparamita teaching, is taught by Buddha Shakyamuni. In the earlier teachings, the Hinayana is the discipline. So now we're taking the discipline and we're applying it to liberation, to breaking through, and to doing it for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings. So if you don't do it for yourself, do it for other beings. Maybe that's a stronger motivation for you to really break through. Okay, so let's begin by reciting the Heart Sutra. Beyond words, beyond description, Prajnaparamita, unborn, unceasing, the very essence of space. Yet it can be experienced as the wisdom of our own awareness. Homage to the mother of the Buddhas of the past, present, and future. In Sanskrit, Bhagavati Prajnaparamita Hridaya. In Tibetan, Chomden Dema Sherab Gi Parotu Chimpe Nyingpo. In English, the Heart Sutra. Homage to the essence of the transcendental knowledge, the Bhagavati. Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of monks and bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, which examines the dharmas called profound illumination. And at that same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the 5 skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should those noble men and women learn? who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge. Thus he spoke. And noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, answered the venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those noble men and women who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is emptiness. Emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness are emptiness. Feeling is emptiness. Emptiness itself is feeling. Emptiness is no other than feeling. Feeling is no other than emptiness. Perception is emptiness. Emptiness itself is perception. Emptiness is no other than perception. Perception is no other than emptiness. Concept is emptiness. Emptiness itself is concept. Emptiness is no other than concept. Concept is no other than emptiness. Consciousness is emptiness. Emptiness itself is consciousness. Emptiness is no other than consciousness. Consciousness is no other than emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not pure or unpure. They are not pure or pure. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no concept, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no dharmas. There is no quality of sight, and so on, until no quality of thought and no quality of mind consciousness. There is no ignorance and no wearing out of ignorance, and so on, until no old age and death, nor their wearing out. In the same way, there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment for the bodhisattvas, they abide by means of transcendental knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment by means of transcendental knowledge. Therefore, the mantra of transcendental knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering, should be known as truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of transcendental knowledge is proclaimed. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Buddhi, Soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the noble Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, well done, noble son. It is so, it is just so. Profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and the noble Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering, and the world and its gods, men, Asuras, and Gandharas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. So thus ends the Mahayana Sutra called the Bhagavati Essence of Transcendent Knowledge. So now we recite. So relax, stay in the 7-point posture of Varanchana as best you can. The most important part is keeping your back straight. So wherever you're sitting, maintain that posture. Stay relaxed in your body. If your body begins to give you some discomfort, just move whatever you need to regain your comfort. That's fine. Try and keep your back straight through that and try and maintain the mantra, reciting the mantra. So now we begin. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi, Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi, Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi, Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Teata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gate Gate Para Soha. Now, like bees buzzing around the beehive. Teata Om begans Teata Om Gate Parasam Gate Buddhi Soha. Teata Gate Parasam Gate Buddhi Soha. Teata Om Gate Parasam. So Deata Om Gate Parasam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deata Om Gate Parasam Gate Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gadi Para Sam Gadi Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gadi Para Sam Gadi Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gadi Para Sam Gadi Buddhi. Deyata Om Gadi Para Sam Gadi Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gadi Para Sam Gadi Buddhi Soha. Deyata Om Gadi Paragati Parasati Soha Deyata Om Gadi Parasam Gadi Buddhi Soha Deyata Om Gadi Paragati Parasam Gati Bodhiso Adayata Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati So Adayata Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bodhiso 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 Deyata Om Gadi Gadi Paragadi Parasam Gadi Barisoa 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 Deyata Om Gadi Gadi Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Paragati So Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata 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 Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Deyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bariso Adayata Om Gati Deyata Om Gati Gati Take a deep breath and hold it. Exhale and hold it. Take a deep breath and hold it. Exhale and hold it. Take a deep breath and hold it. Exhale and hold it. Relax and breathe normal. Just stay relaxed. If your mind wanders, just bring it back to the mantra. Tayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bodhisoha Tayata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasam Gati Bodhisoha. We'll do a short 5 minute meditation on emptiness. Just relax. Let your mind relax. Thoughts come. Just let them go. Resume the mantra. Watch the breath. Catch a glimpse of the mind as it is. The mind in emptiness, shunyata. Take a deep breath and hold it. Exhale and hold it. Open your eyes, stay relaxed. Open your eyes, breathe normal. We come back to page 17. We recite out loud. Namo, homage to the Lama, homage to the Buddhas, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha, homage to the Great Mother, transcendent knowledge. May all my words be accomplished. Just as formerly Indra, Lord of the gods, contemplating the profound meaning of the transcendent knowledge, recited these words, and by that they all turned back all evil and other disagreeable elements. May I too, by contemplating the profound meaning of transcendent knowledge and reciting the words, make all evil and all disagreeable elements turn back. May they be destroyed. May they be calmed. May they be totally calmed. Repeat 2 more times. May they be destroyed. May they be calmed. May they be totally calmed. May they be destroyed. May they be calmed. May they be totally calmed. Whatever is interdependent, arising from connection, is without cessation and without birth, without end and without permanence, without coming and without going, without division and without unity of meaning. All conditions fully released, teaching release, I bow to the sacred words of the perfect Buddha. May there be good fortune. Sarva Mangalam. Thank you very much. Would anybody like to make a comment about the Heart Sutra or ask a question about it?
Pema Dorje, we at our Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple, we recite the Heart Sutra at the beginning of each service, and it's the foundation sutra for the temple.
Yes. So the teachings that, the discussions that we've had these past 2 weeks with what we talked about 2 weeks ago, and then last Monday, Bernie spoke about emptiness. So this is the practice of emptiness. This is what leads us to the practice of emptiness. This Heart Sutra is very precise. So it's like a surgical knife, cutting through all the confusions, cutting through all the connections that we make for ourselves, the attachments and the aversions, etc. What do you think? Yes, go ahead.
Lance, yes, it was very good to engage in this practice. For me, it's special because from what I heard, this is a sutra that practiced like as a foundational or like at least almost universal for a school of Buddhism that's called Chan School of Buddhism, from which Zen Buddhism originated, like in Japan. And I practice martial arts, and many great masters are also Buddhist followers, and that is also a sutra that they've practiced in their path, from what I understand. I do you have any comment or elaboration on that?
Well, yes, I understand, and I know that to be true, and that the Chan and is translated as the Zen practice, and maybe um, Koga can talk more about that because as he just said, that's a fundamental practice in their tradition that they recite every day. So, Koga, do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, I can say a couple of things. So it's interesting that the different ways that we chant it. Um, we have a more melodious chanting at the temple, where we chant it together. I don't know who came up with the melody that we use, but when I sit with the Soto Zen group, um, we just chant it, really fast, kind of monotone. And the idea is like to get it into your bones without even thinking about it, and I think that's maybe similar to what we're going for when we're chanting the mantra at the end, just kind of that kind of developing that one pointed focus. I think that, it's an interesting sutra because it goes through all the teachings of the Buddha and says, don't get attached to them. Don't get attached to, the four types of suffering. Don't get attached to the path. Don't get attached to the Eightfold Path. It just kind of just reminds you that all of these concepts are possibilities for attachment. And there's this interconnectedness or interdependence with all these concepts. You can't just take them out, and say you're just going to do this one, without thinking about the others. So thank you.
What does the melody that you use sound like, or the chant that you do? Can you give us a sample of that?
The Prajna Paramitra Hridaya Sutra.
So you're
The
reciting all the
Bodhisattva.
text and everything.
We don't recite all the same texts as you have here. It's
How about the
simplified.
mantra itself? Te Teata Om
Gate,
Gate Gate
gate,
Paragate.
paragate. We just do this part. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhiswaha. We just do that part 3 times. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhiswaha. So it's been shortened.
So you don't continue, you don't do mallow rounds of it.
They don't. No, there's no tradition at the. It's a young temple. It's only been there for 10 years, and it was founded as a Korean Zen. And there's, in my experience, I don't have a huge amount of experience with Zen. I've been sitting with the Soto group for a couple of years, but the mala is never used. Right. So the
Never
only
used
place
for anything?
never used for anything. It might be different if you're in a large, the group I sit with is just a small group. So maybe if you're in a temple, it's more traditional. Maybe there's a use of the mala in the temple that I'm not familiar with, but it's not part of the teachings that were kept up with that. The Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple is not Korean Zen anymore. So we're sort of a more Americanized practice, kind of that incorporates, little bits of Tibetan, little bits of Mahayana, little bits of Zen. But yeah, this group is the only group where I've begun to learn about the mala and the use of mala rounds and chanting.
I see.
Thank you.
Bernie, you have any comments on this? Particularly using logic, the teachings that we've gone through about trying to understand emptiness from a logical point of view, from an intellectual point of view, and how that ultimately releases us.
Uh, okay, the Heart Sutra is it's a funny text. It's because you're bringing in the Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, and everything, and how it connects with the philosophy is a little bit tricky. You would generally say that the philosophy is more or less an explanation of what's being said, an amplification of what's being said in here. And there are several commentaries on the Heart Sutra that I've seen. The original one I saw, of course, was the translation and commentary by Edward Kanza, who translated so many of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. But I mean, I can't, it's not something I could really sum up in a few words as to the connection between the philosophy and the Heart Sutra itself, except maybe to say something about form as emptiness and emptiness as form. Basically, it means that you're not going to find emptiness apart from or aside from form. And you're not going, when we understand what form is, then we understand emptiness. When we understand emptiness, we understand what form is. That's really the only thing I could say right now. And of course, that applies to all the other skandhas as well.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment? Matt, what do you think?
I think some of what we were talking about last time and the time before that, and in other studies of, and they say like that what Bernie was just saying about emptiness and form, it really understanding more of that emptiness is for the most part referring to that conditionality of things, to things being impermanent, to things being dependently arising. I think for me helps me make sense of that and what is meant by, because when viewed in that, without viewing it in that way, or like when I was first, many years ago exposed to it, it sounds very nihilistic without understanding that part of it, of the of form being or emptiness being form, and obviously the opposite. So that's some of what I was thinking. Can I don't know if this would be interesting to people or helpful or not, for like read, like, I mean, this would take like 10 20 seconds or something, and some notes I took at on a teaching by Garchen Rinpoche
Sure,
on
go ahead.
from this little Amitabha teachings that to me like really hit me. It was very profound. So it was on how samsara is created in the mind. So this isn't word for word. I think it accurately represents what he said. So if there's a mistake, I apologize. But so he was saying that so how samsara is created in the mind, that that everything is empty by nature, but as ordinary beings, we grasp at the reality of what we see, that we believe in that reality, and then we then believe in the reality of self and other, and that then this then gives rise to the thoughts of attachment and aversion and all of the afflictive emotions, and then creates these fixations in our mind, which is like the cold weather that makes the mind freeze like an ice block. That nothing possesses true existence, but due to our karma, these things appear to us in this way. And then when we realize that nothing actually really exists, you attain enlightenment. And if you don't realize that, you'll grasp at that reality of what appears, and that's what a sentient being is, without realizing the true nature of appearances. So not realizing the true nature of appearances is called samsara. I don't know. To me, that like really hit me, given what we had been talking about in group.
Do you think?
Thanks. That's great.
Does.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that. I think that adds to the message of the Heart Sutra.
It's just, it's so succinct the way he describes it, of like,
Do you think having that something like that available, that or even the Heart Sutra or your notes or whatever, but having those around you, near you, very close to you when you're in a meditation session, and when your mind begins to wander, and you go back to these reference materials to help you to recognize why it's wandering, to go through a logical cutting through, to be able to say, oh, this is why, this is what I'm doing, and it's pulling me out of my meditation. Now I need to let that go and go back to my meditation. Do you think that's at all useful?
yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I probably wouldn't go to it like during the meditation. I mean, maybe if I was getting really distracted. But yeah, for sure. And I think like you talk about that the circle of coming back around and then kind of going up. to me that really resonates with me, and I know at least just for me, like I need the repetition of like going through these things over and over again, and then things start to make more sense, or in my experience of things kind of changes some and starts to set in more, and so like I need to keep going around and around and around with the teachings and hearing them over and over again, and then practicing them over and over again and things.
What do you think about having, ritual objects around, whether it's pictures, images of Buddhas or mandalas or candles or whatever, as reminders, to when our mind wanders, to bring it back to these ritual objects, say, oh, this is where I need to be. This leads me to that peace of mind. This leads me to that no thought, to that shunyata, to that awareness of emptiness and abiding in the emptiness.
Are you asking me specifically or just the group in general?
Well, the group in general, and anybody'd like to comment on it. Do you think that we abide in emptiness? Bernie, what do you think about that? Do we abide in emptiness?
Do we abide in emptiness? Well, generally, when this kind of question comes up, what's our relationship with wisdom? Emptiness, of course, seeing emptiness is wisdom. I always use the analogy of Superman and Clark Kent. When you see Clark Kent, you're really seeing Superman. There's nothing else to see besides Clark Kent. But we don't realize that Clark Kent is Superman. So we're all abiding in emptiness all the time. We just don't realize it. We take emptiness to be substantial. We take it to be the substantial forms that we normally think of, and that's the problem, that we have this sort of screen of concepts that's really in front of our minds, and that obscures our wisdom, like clouds obscure the sun or the moon. So everybody is abiding in emptiness all the time, but they really don't realize that they're abiding in emptiness.
Do you think that we're afraid of that, or we just as a result, we entertain ourselves?
It can be that people are afraid of it. I think it really depends upon the person.
Most people don't even realize it.
They don't even, if they don't even know what emptiness is, they can't be afraid of experience emptiness, of course. But sometimes when people get close to emptiness, they just draw back out of fear. So it does become, it can become a barrier at that point.
Anybody else have a comment? Yes, go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I was just contemplating, thinking about past and like why would people go live in the temple in the past? And of course, there were also wars and unfortunate conditions and all that. So somebody would enter a monastery to relieve themselves from suffering, and what kind of suffering? It often would be grief, somebody's lost, or loved ones, or it could be resentment, like the sense of revenge. They have this idea maybe of somebody done injustice, and they want revenge, but they don't want to kill people, out of that revenge. So they may take themselves away from the world to live in monastery, and how do they deal with that? So, and I see that the Heart Sutra is a great tool to be able to manage and release these grievances, these pains, attachments, and so on and so forth, that normally is very hard to let go, and it's really deep and strong. So I think that's why it was important also in for people who engage in martial arts, because oftentimes, you know, things happen that you don't have much control of, and you don't want to have you want to be able to tame your mind, so the power that you have is not used is not abused, is not acted upon out of grief or revenge or whatever, out of negative. And that's so, and it also helps one to survive in difficult situation, or when somebody attacks you, for example, and you need to defend yourself, because those thoughts and emotions that keep circling in our mind, right? They keep circling in our mind. They distract us from seeing the reality. And you really need to see the reality when things happen quick, when you want to avoid danger, when you want to find an escape, for example. If somebody is like going after you, right? So it is I see why it was value in Zen Buddhism, and also in for people who take on like martial arts training, for example. But I see it's also great for doctors, you know, who lose their patients, you know, despite their great efforts, you know, or patients who maybe under, you know, condition of life-threatening disease, and they have to make decisions that basically life and death for them. Do they go into surgery or not? Do they do another round of chemotherapy or not? And things like that. So being able to calm their mind, calm emotions, clear their path, and see the truth as it is. I mean, maybe they have a chance to live. Maybe they clearly see there is no chance. Maybe they'll focus on something else instead of going through, you know, grueling chemotherapy, which is not going to bring any hope. They may see the truth for themselves, and they may go to visit their friends and relatives for the last time, and you know, depart peacefully. That's so. I think that's have wide applications, if you want to put it that way.
Last week, at the end of the session, when we were, Bernie was talking and so on, and I wrote down a note, and on the same piece of paper that I wrote down a note when we started this discussion on emptiness 3 weeks ago. And the question at that time was, what is real? So then we go through these next 2 sessions talking about emptiness and everything. And then the question that came to my mind is, well, what do we do with this? What do we, you know, what do we do now, to whatever degree we understand emptiness and are able to recognize and abide in emptiness? What do we do with that? So,
well, yeah, I think that's a good question. If somebody else want to jump in, please do.
well, let me focus it. Let me focus it with just one more statement, and that is, how does emptiness intersect with the concept of bodhicitta?
Yes, I think when thinking about emptiness, there is a bit of a trap that we can see, that everything is empty, and thus there is no point of doing anything. There is no point of compassion, because why? Everything is empty.
Or isn't that
Why should we
nihilism?
care?
Isn't that nihilism?
It is exactly, it is. So, and that's why we have bodhicitta, which is kind of action, compassion in action. And if we see, if we have that as a unity of emptiness and compassion, we not only see, we kind of see both relative truth and absolute truth. So on a relative level, there is true suffering, there is true loss, and a true despair, through sometimes through joy. I mean, I would say not true, but real, something that you feel. That's what I mean by real. Something you feel very strongly, or somebody else can feel very strongly. But on the other hand, ultimately, they are coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. So they are not inherently absolutely there. They are not really existing permanently. So, but if we able to overcome these extremes, then there is a peace, right? And how do we? And it's not what about. So maybe like, what do we do with this? Is to apply that so we achieve peace.
Okay, good.
That's
Can I ask Bernie to
those are my
comment?
thoughts.
What do you think about that intersection of emptiness and bodhicitta?
Oh, actually, this is something I have a lot to say about, or something, maybe not a lot, but something that's very important to me, at least, is that when ever we meet somebody, we're putting all sorts of labels on the other person. They're white, they're black, they're rich, they're poor, they're whatever. We put all sorts of labels on whoever we meet. And because of these labels, we can't feel that sort of genuine compassion and love, because we aren't seeing the other person as they are. We're seeing them through the filter of our labels. And because of that, we can't have this unconditional love for another person if we're putting all sorts of labels upon them. And it's only when we can see beyond the labels, when we see the labels or the that we place on other people don't really exist, that can really have genuine love and bodhicitta. Universal love. Because universal love can only exist when we aren't drawing distinctions between one person and another person. And that only happens when we see them and everything else in the light of emptiness.
So would it be correct to say something to the effect of that bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, the bodhicitta, the emptiness, is the loving kindness part of bodhicitta, is the wisdom aspect. You know, that
It's actually it's the equanimity part, I think. Equanimity is where we don't draw distinctions anymore between one and another. The equanimity can only come about with an understanding of emptiness.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
anybody else have a comment about that?
I think that, you know, the term emptiness ties people up. But if we are more specific about what we're talking about, and we're saying that, you know, this other person is a result of many different causes and conditions, you know, their parents, their upbringing, the schooling they had, the experience they had as a child, as an adult, culture they grew up in, maybe some genetic things are passed down through them, through their ancestors. And because of all those different things, and those things are changing, right? That's not the same. This person that's in front of us is probably not the same person they were 5 years ago or when they were a child. That if we can see those things, you know, that's seeing emptiness, you know. But when you say emptiness, people tend to think, well, then there's nothing there. You know, there's nothing there. There's no label. Like Bernie said, the label doesn't really exist. It's the label we're trying to get beyond. But the emptiness word can be kind of a barrier, you know, because that people think about nothingness, you know. But if we more specific and just talk about how this person and this environment, this moment is a result of all these causes and conditions, then I think that can help us build more empathy, and with our own life, more equanimity as well too, because we can see when these bad things happen to us, it's not because somebody's out to get us or we've necessarily done something wrong. You know, maybe we have done something wrong. You know, sometimes it's, you know, it is our fault sometimes, right? But but sometimes, you know, it's just something that's come down to us, you know. And maybe it was, maybe, you know, maybe I have a health problem because I've inherited something genetically from my ancestors, you know. And so in a way, I guess that's my fault, right? They're my ancestors, they had it too, but maybe they got it because they're just a human being and it's just fault in their gene. So if they weren't human beings, you know, that's the fault of that medical problem, you know, if they were a human being and not some other type of organism that doesn't get this particular type of disease. That's my karma as a human being. So I'm kind of going broad afield there. But I think that the emptiness term itself creates confusion. You know, it's a nice term because it's so encompassing of all these different topics, but unless we get down and talk about specifically what we're talking about, we just kind of, we can lose people. And like you said, and people think, oh, nothing matters because everything's empty. But really everything matters because everything's connected, because everything's empty. So.
Thank you. I think that brings a kind of analogy from cosmology. Like physicists like to say the vacuum is not really empty because there is space in it. so like same thing, like the emptiness that we talk about is not absolute nothingness. It is something, but it's conditioned by the form. So as soon as we have some kind of form, then there is emptiness which is inside of that form. It makes a boundary of something that's inside. So, and there are two sides of one coin, so to speak.
So I
And
think,
so, yeah,
can I say something?
yeah,
So I think at the level that we're logically examining this, you know, and if there is some kind of a intersection or a permeation between the emptiness and bodhicitta, then where is bodhicitta in the Heart Sutra? You know, what lines in the Heart Sutra are specifically bodhicitta? Where can we see that? you know. So to do it now may not be a practical thing to do. We don't have much time to do it, you know, but the point is that this is the kind of exercise that we go through in our contemplation phase of the stages of meditation in order to be able to recognize certain things, whatever it is. Here we're trying to recognize, you know, the intersection between bodhicitta and emptiness. But these two are two very, very, very fundamental, basic concepts of the mind that do come together in some way. And so it behooves us to want to investigate that.
Well, if I could answer your question, Lance, I think where bodhicitta comes in to the Heart Sutra, not explicitly but implicitly, is that the person who's speaking is Avalokiteshvara, and Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva who represents bodhicitta.
Yeah, but bodhisattva of compassion.
He's a bodhisattva of compassion, and for that reason, he symbolizes bodhicitta. He's speaking from the standpoint of bodhicitta.
But couldn't you also say that the Heart Sutra itself, that emptiness, awareness of emptiness, is the ultimate wisdom?
Sure. Well,
so the ultimate wisdom then.
Ultimate is a word that gets thrown around a lot. It's hard to say what the ultimate is, but certainly it's very important.
Well, none of this is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, this conversation, none of it is wrong. It's just points of view and examining, taking it apart and looking at it and trying to put it together in its purest form, you know. But if the Prajna Paramita, which means the wisdom perfection, right? That's the translation of Prajna Paramita, is wisdom perfection. So the wisdom perfection, how does that display itself? That's the compassion of that. The absolute nature of the Dharmakaya then displays itself as the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya in terms of the Buddha bodies and so on. You know, but in bodhicitta, then we add the elements of joy and the elements of equanimity. So to me, it's just an interesting thing to be able to look and see where are those intersections. And what triggered this for me was Bernie's comment a few minutes ago when he said that the Heart Sutra displays itself as the equanimity of bodhicitta. I always thought of it as the wisdom aspect. But he's right. It does the element of equanimity as well. But then when I think about it and I just briefly look at this, I can see joy there and I can see compassion there.
I could see it potentially with the loving kindness and compassion as well, as if someone there's no longer a sense of self and other that I could imagine. That I don't know what that's like. Obviously, I'm not having these experiences right now, but you know, if there's no separation between two people, then it's like complete intimacy in some way as well, where it's like, you know, the way someone would love their own hand or their own, you know, I don't know, something kind of unconditional or natural about it. The analogy is very imperfect because there's a lot of grasping within the analogy that I'm comparing it to, but something like that, of without the self and other, without the self-grasping, that the realization of emptiness would dissolve. I would imagine there would no longer be that conflict, the selfishness that gets in the way of the compassion, maybe something like that.
Sure. Isn't there an attachment to the mind?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I have a question, like maybe I have an answer, but I would like to hear what other people say. So when we say gare gare parasam gare, So something is gone, right? Something is gone beyond. So what it is or who it is that is gone beyond when we recite the mantra.
So that's a question.
Yes.
Well, to me, it's the mind.
What are we sending away?
You know,
What-
it's our you know, it's all the emotions, it's our preconceived ideas, our mental misconceptions, and our habitual tendencies. It's all the things that we hold on to that keeps us as a coming back as a sentient being. You know, that which gives us identity, etc. All the things it keeps us. It's the anti-freedom. We don't want to be free. So this mantra represents the 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 point at which we are able to liberate.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking as well. All our fixed concepts, whatever we think is permanent form, we let it go. So because we see that is emptiness, form is emptiness. But also, as soon as we think emptiness is really nothing, we remind ourselves that emptiness is a form. So that help us also get away from nihilism.
Well,
So
emptiness has, to say it another way, emptiness has many forms then.
yeah, emptiness.
Form is
Where
emptiness, emptiness is form.
where do forms reside? The only place the forms can appear is in emptiness.
Well, in our mind.
Yeah, in the space of our mind.
And that itself is empty.
Yeah. So um
So part
we
of this
that way we get away of. Yeah,
I was going to
I'm
say
saying
part
that's
of
how
this
we go away from
is that constant, you know, going back and forth until we finally exhaust ourselves and say, man, all this intellectual investigation really doesn't get me anywhere because I keep coming back to the same place where I started. And then, you know, you finally say, well, I can see the emptiness of all of this.
Yeah,
You know,
it's just cause and effect.
because we're in our mind. But to be able to experience that in a non-intellectual way,
Yes.
that's the liberation. And we catch glimpses of that. That's the glimpse after glimpse after glimpse that we learn to kind of stabilize, and finally we're able to make them broader, to make them deeper, and so on. And just to give, you know, some other intellectual words to try and describe it, but when all this intellectualization just goes away. What do you think about that, Bernie? Does that make sense to you?
It's a little abstract. I don't know. At a certain point, yeah, when we're doing practice, we pursue the ideas of emptiness or whatever, and we find that we're not getting anywhere, and we just okay. What I used to say, you never make any progress in meditation until you give up, because it's when you give up that's when the breakthrough happens. So if I would just leave it at that as far as practice goes, and giving up, of course, means giving up trying to understand it and just resting in the resting in that experience of not knowing.
But it's not a giving up out of frustration or sorrow or anything like that.
It's
There's a joyful quality to that.
Well, it depends. It doesn't have to be joyful. I've heard there are all sorts of stories of like Zen students who come to the end of their rope and they're about to kill themselves, and finally they realize enlightenment.
Yeah,
Or
but then
not
there's bliss.
enlightenment, but
But
a
then
certain level.
there's the essence of bliss. They cancel out the attachment to taking their own life.
Of course, at that point. But it can be very frustrating. Let's just leave it there. You just have to be patient with the practice, whether it's positive or negative or whatever. You just have to be patient and just continue doing the practice. Now, I will have to say that it's actually more difficult to get something out of meditation when you're really attracted to what's happening in that particular moment. If something wonderful seems to be happening, that's fine, but you're not going to have any great insight out of that wonderful feeling. It might be a wonderful experience. It's only when you let it, when something is really doesn't feel that special, that you really get the truth of the truth from meditation.
Or should that prevent you from continuing on for the liberation?
Well, you see, the problem is we get attached to wonderful feelings. It's hard to drop that attachment.
Well, that's true, but does that prevent you from continuing on to the liberation?
Oh, no, you just have to be patient with whatever comes up, whether it's bad or good, positive or negative. Just continue with the practice.
Because
Don't
those are
get
the stages
frustrated.
of meditation.
Don't get frustrated. Don't get attached. Just keep on going.
That's the point of the bhumis, being able
Right.
to articulate the bhumis, which are the stages of the final 10 stages, as it said, of becoming a Buddha, the stages of a bodhisattva, of a holy enlightened being who's getting more and more subtle, more and more abstract with each level. To an ordinary mind, it's very abstract. But to the one who's doing it, it makes perfect sense.
Well, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to put any experience, even the most ordinary experience, into words. That's why there are so few poets, I imagine. But certainly, as the experience becomes more profound, it just gets harder and harder to express it to other people. Basically, you just point people in the right direction and let them see what they can see.
Gunga, in the Zen tradition, has this kind of topic come up? Have you discussed this? What Bernie was saying and so on, is about a Zen practitioner wanting to kill themselves because of their suffering, but then at some point they have an epiphany or whatever, and are released from that suffering.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a deep, rich tradition in Zen where lots of different koans passed down about different students and teacher relationships where the student has come to a certain point and the teacher or oftentimes it's the teacher recognizes the students at a certain point and provides them with the inspiration to break them out of their stuckness, I guess. Let them see open them up a little bit. Oftentimes, they're stuck in their concepts. Teacher does something unexpected, unexplainable, and then when the student suddenly realizes that they can see beyond their labels of what's supposed to be happening or who they are, who they think their teacher is, and that gives them some sense of enlightenment. And then they kind of have to keep building on that and working with that the rest of their life. When we are talking about the gone, beyond, fully beyond, awake, rejoice, that for some, I don't think I've read this in a teaching, but it always made me think about this idea of moving beyond our labels. That we have, there's a Zen story about how when the ordinary people look at a mountain and look at rivers, they just see mountain and rivers. And then when the Zen student sees a mountain and river, they see emptiness. But then when the Zen master sees the mountains and rivers, they see mountains and rivers again. And there's this idea of coming to terms with your conceptual knowledge and then putting it into the real world and living with it in a way that's going to build your practice. So I think that, with my hospice work, that's something that often comes up, is how do you work with people where they are and try and understand in a little bit more detail the emptiness that's going on with them, their personalities, their physical situation, their social situation, all that's interconnected, interdependent. It's always changing, and try to avoid, pigeonholing these people into a certain way of reacting. Like, oh, I know how they're going to respond to this, or I know how they should respond to this, or they'd have a much better death if they just did this. And letting go of those concepts and just being there with them as they are and just trying to let them have space to be who they are. I guess that's what that makes me think of it.
Thank you. Well, we only have a few minutes left in our time period here, so I just want to ask everybody, Mark, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this? And Zara, you haven't said anything tonight, but is there anything that you would like to add to this conversation, or any questions that you have?
I would just like to say that I'm missing so much that as preface to this conversation, I just don't know how to contribute.
Okay.
I don't know what I could contribute.
Well, next year we'll ask you the same question, and maybe you'll have more to say.
I will. But I want to thank all of you for the conversation.
So keep on working is the point, keep on attending, keep on thinking about it, and developing your practice. So, there's more experience to be had.
Yes. And more reading. I need to do a lot more reading.
It's not one experience. There's many,
Correct.
many, many experiences. We're constantly having experiences.
Yes. But I think the conversation has been great and I've enjoyed it. But as I say, I'm missing the structural elements that would enable me to be part of it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being part of it.
Thank you.
Okay, so would anybody else like to have a last statement about anything or comment, question? Okay, well then let's go to our dedications and recite our dedication. So let's go please to the dedication by Lord Jigten Sumgun, the dedication prayer. So everybody should recite this out loud with your microphone off so we don't get a lot of feedback and so on, but doing it strongly with conviction, with devotion, and listen to the meaning of each one of these phrases and words and concepts and so on that are being discussed here in this dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgun. This prayer is over 800 years old and has been continued to be recited all these years and so on, and how many people this has helped, because this is the equanimity, this is the balance of giving this to all beings, the dedication, that we're not keeping this for ourselves. We are dedicating whatever merit we have gathered, whatever wisdom we have gathered, whatever skillful means that we have gathered, we are dedicating it to the enlightenment of all other beings. So we recite, glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Lance, and everybody
Thank
who
you, Alex.
shared their thoughts.